This is the Ignite to Impact podcast. Hi, I'm Dr. Geneva, and today you'll hear about how you can discover who you are and bankroll it. That is, make a profit from it. My guest, Nicole Roberts Jones, CEO of Fierce Factor, tells us how to take your gift and help you figure out what you can do with your gift and how you can profit from it.
Welcome to Ignite to Impact, a weekly podcast about next generation leadership and what it takes to make a difference at work, with family, and in your community. Get ready to be inspired as we pull back the curtain and dive into intimate and energetic conversations with achievers and doers who are in the trenches navigating workplace politics and influencing change. Get ready to hear how leaders fail and get back up, learning how to keep it together while traveling in their leadership journey. Our mission, to help you with leadership tips and strategies that you can use to get fast results and help make your business, community, and world a better place. Now, here's your host, Master Leadership Strategist, Dr. Geneva Williams. So, let's ignite to impact.
Hi, everyone, again. This is Dr. Geneva, and welcome to the Ignite to Impact podcast. It's so great being able to talk with phenomenal women. You know, I enjoy that on my podcast. Now, on my podcast, as you know, I talk to men and women, but it's just so special when I get to talk to an awesome sister girlfriend. And, you know, women who are making a difference, women who are paving the way, women who are fierce. And today I've got best-selling author, speaker, and CEO of Fierce Factor Lab, Nicole Roberts Jones. She's known best for her ability to draw out the best from entrepreneurs, heads of states, executives, through her experience and expertise in business, program, and talent development. She's the creator of the Fierce Formula, and she works with entrepreneurs to develop multiple streams of income building and to make that all possible in an empire from their own expertise. So you know she's somebody we really want to hear about. She is in California, and we'll find out exactly wherever it is. I know the sun is out, but her clients have included Steve Harvey World Group, General Motors, McDonald's, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Lisa Nichols, and Motivating the Masses. She also works with Working Mother Magazine, the Boss Network, and she is just all over, as well as a former adjunct professor at USC and Boston University. She lives now in Massachusetts, not in California. But anyway, she's here with me now. Thank you so much, and welcome, Nicole Roberts Jones.
Yay, thank you for having me. And let me just say, right now, I sure wish I was in California. I live in Massachusetts, and the weather has not been friendly. Let me just say that.
Okay.
So thank you for having me.
Yes, and I think I got that because if I remember correctly, weren't you born and raised in California?
Yes, so I've been in Massachusetts for 12 years. But yes, you were right. I am originally from Los Angeles. Yes.
That's right. L.A. And yes, so while we're on that subject, tell us about you and growing up and your childhood.
Sure. So, you know, what's interesting is most people, when they hear this notion of fierce, they think it's an outside indicator, and it's not. It has nothing to do with the outside of you. It has everything to do with who you are at the core of you. So, and I'm only starting my own journey with that because growing up in South Central LA, and I'm going to keep it all the way real because we're friends now, and if anybody, and your listeners, that means that you're my friends automatically now too, right? So,
yes.
Growing up in South Central LA, I'm a light-skinned African-American woman, and most people would say to me, Nicole, you're cute, so you should do one of two things. You should marry a baller. I'm going to keep it all the way real. A drug dealer, or you need to find a basketball player, an actor, you know. So, in other words, no one stopped long enough to look at the inside of me.
Okay.
And so for so long, I didn't know who I was. I listened to what everyone else told me I should do or be. And so I started my career initially in entertainment. And don't get me wrong, entertainment is great. I do miss the parties. However, I just to give you a glimpse of my entertainment career, I worked for Viacom's largest cable network. We had an outreach to 89 million homes on a weekly basis. From there, in the 90s, I worked for the #1 TV show on Fox. And then from there, I worked with the entertainment group, and what we produced generated over $12.6 billion a year. Mm-hmm. So, of course, in addition to all of that, I was going to all the hot Hollywood parties. I'm bumping elbows with stars, people that you've seen on TV and you've looked at on films. So I'm living the dream life. But I woke up one morning and began to ask myself, how did I get in this nightmare? And I'm only saying that because I woke up one morning and I realized I didn't know who I was. Mm-hmm. I had become a woman that, again, everyone else told me who I should be and what I should do. Mm-hmm. And so in the midst of me feeling dazed and confused, because, every friend I called, Dr. Geneva, thought I had lost my mind. Like, they would say stuff like, girl, didn't you just go to the premiere for such and such yesterday? And did you go to such and such? What? Mm-hmm. Are you crazy that you feel like this doesn't fit? And again, don't get me wrong, Hollywood is great. And I do still miss the parties. I'm going to say that one more time because I do.
Yes.
But what I began to start asking myself is, how do you want to be remembered? Mm-hmm. What kind of lasting impact do you want to have in this world? And so in the middle of me feeling dazed and confused, just to give you full circle on how I got to this place, one of my good girlfriends, still a great girlfriend to this day, asked me to volunteer with her at a program at our church. And so it was a Friday night. And as I walked into the walls of that church that night, and I started working with young women who looked like me. And this is right around the LA riots. It was right after the LA riots. And as I started talking to them and working with them, really on crafting what it is they were meant to do or be in this world, and as I started talking to them and their eyes lit up, and as their eyes lit up, my heart lit up. And I realized this is what I'm meant to do. But there was no paycheck in this. This was 1993. There was no paycheck. This wasn't glamorous, right, as my Hollywood career, and no one was banging down the doors to do this work. There was no such thing as a coach in 1993, not out in public, I should say. But for some reason, for the first time in my life, my soul was alive. As I began to make a really long story short, I really began to, I called that my moment where I found my fierce. And that's when I began to do the thing that was rumbling in my own spirit. And I stopped caring about what other people thought or said. I stopped living into perception. Mm-hmm. And so that really is the journey that got me to do what I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm. So being fierce is all about knowing, being, and understanding yourself. Mm-hmm. In all kinds of situations.
Well, really, fierce for me is my word for purpose on fire. So fierce really is, obviously everybody knows who Beyonce is, and when she's standing on stage, she's Sasha Fierce, right? So for Beyonce, when she's standing on stage, she's standing in the full power of her gift. She's being the woman she was born to be, doing the things she was born to do, and she is unapologetic about it. And so it's my life journey, first for me to fully stand in my own gift and stop caring what other people have to say or think. But now I really hold the space that other women, too, can stand in the full power of who they are and stop living into perception. Mm-hmm. That's what fierce is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so you had this aha moment at the church. You had this awakening. So what then happened? What happened next?
So, now, this was 1993, so that was like 25 or so years ago. So, even though I'm still 25, that was 25 or so years ago. So, understand that even though it's going to sound like it was a short journey, it wasn't. So, what I began to realize as I started working with young women, I first started with young women. I started a program at my church. And as I started working with them as a volunteer, and really what I was doing then, I would never have been able to articulate. I was 23. I was doing it as a volunteer. I was just loving what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I started creating workshops and foundational coaching with them. And I wanted to do this as a full-time job. And I love that you asked me about my MSW degree. So, coming from entertainment, I wanted to, switch careers. So I didn't know what this was that I was doing. Right? I just loved it. Mm-hmm. And so I started trying to define it. I started looking in want ads because there was no internet then, okay? This is how long ago it was. Yes. I had to get a newspaper and look in the want ads. So I started looking at jobs that sounded like what I was doing. And so every job that sounded similar to what I was doing, you know, facilitating workshops, doing group, now I would call it group coaching, but back then I was just thinking facilitating groups, right? And so every job that did that, I needed an MSW. I'm like, what the heck is that, right? And so finally, after I sent in application after application after application, I finally get an interview. And the woman has a plaque on her wall that says Masters of Social Work. I'm like, oh.
That's what it is.
Right. So I went and got one of those. But here's the thing that's going to answer your question. So I thought what I was doing was counseling, right? Because, again, this is a whole new arena I don't realize. And my first two clients as an MSW student, my first two clients stared at me. One was staring at me for an hour, and the other little boy was so bad, I promise you, I was like, Lord, I know I'm going to get fired or go to jail because I just want to grab this little boy and pop him because he's so bad. So I said, I'm obviously not meant to be a clinical social worker. So I decided to take a program development class. And in those classes, I realized, oh, my God, this is everything I've been doing that I love with my girls. So my expertise was called then COPA, Community Organizing, Planning, Administration.
Yes.
So to give you a full circle moment of how I got here, I realized when I worked in entertainment, I worked in talent management and casting. Really what I'm doing now with my clients is taking their talent, it's still talent management, and now I'm producing it, meaning that my program development expertise that I got in my master's degree, I teach clients, and fellas, just because I'm saying women, 95% of my clients are women, don't feel like you're left out, right? But really what I do now is teach women how to take their gift, and there are 6 streams of income you can make from your gift that you even realize are available to you. So it's like all my years from entertainment, my master's degree in social work with expertise in program development, now all those things have come full circle as I now really help women. I call it bankroll your brilliance.
Oh, love it. Bankroll your brilliance. I love it. And your story about the MSW and falling into that, I only say that because that's how I fell into my MSW, the same way. I had no plan, nothing. I was out working, and one of my sorority sisters, and I know we're same sorority, Skiweed, AKAs, okay. One of my sorority sisters came up to give me great advice like they always do, and said that there was some opportunities to go get a MSW at Bryn Mawr in Philadelphia and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, get a what? Where? Right. But I believe God's hand was in that like in everything else. Yes. And that's the way it seems that your path also has gone. And I just love how you have taken that MSW and that experience, even though, in the beginning it was some of that clinical stuff. That's right. And worked it and moved it into how you're helping and what you're doing today. Now you mentioned about taking your gift, working with women primarily, helping them take their gifts and make money. Can you give us one example of how you do that?
Sure. So let me first say that anytime I talk about your expertise, I'm talking about your intellectual property. And what most people first don't realize is that you have intellectual property. So I'm talking to you whether you're a coach, a consultant, any kind of service professional, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant. Most people that work one-on-one with clients, you can work one to many, and you can work one to many and not be present. I call that making money while you sleep. So when I'm talking to you, Dr. Geneva, somebody somewhere is watching one of my online programs, and I'm not there, right?
Yes.
So really to give you an example, this is my favorite example to use, is I've had the pleasure to work with Lifetime Television Super Nanny. Now, it's an American Super Nanny, right, because there was a UK one. So I didn't work with the UK. I worked with the American Super Nanny. And she came to me at a time where she had so many people coming to her, but because she travels extensively speaking, and quite honestly, a lot of people can afford her, right? And so what she was doing was she was leaving families behind, right? And so what we did together was I helped her create her Fierce Formula, which is really a step-by-step process. So what most people don't realize is there's a recipe to you doing what you do. Once we can begin to develop what that recipe is, you can then begin to create some kind of online program, group program. So when I use Deborah Tillman, the Super Nanny, for example, So she said, oh, there's no recipe. There's no way I can give people 5 steps, because every time I do it, I feel them, which most of us discount what's possible, right?
Okay.
And so I gave her some homework, and literally on our next coaching call, she called me crying because she couldn't believe that there was a recipe to what she does, and that her standing in her way kept families from getting what they needed, right? And so because of the work we did, she created what she calls the GPS, the Greater Parenting System. And now, in addition to speaking and one-on-one coaching, she now has a group coaching program and online programs. So that now, depending on when you come to her, she doesn't have to leave any family behind. And that's the way you make a difference. But how you make money while you do it is now she can stop leaving money on the table when she tells people no. Now there's other ways she can serve them.
And so you were able to take her gift and I heard you say bankroll it. I also hear that you were able to diversify it, which is a very important thing to do, to be able to do, because you were able to take what she was doing on a day-to-day basis and make it different and put her into different venues.
So it's not necessarily different venues. It's understanding that your gift. So there's a beginning and an end to everything we each do, right?
Okay.
And so most of us don't understand that. There's a systematic way that you do what you do,
I
right?
see. Okay.
And so once we can define what that system is and put it into a formula, then, for instance, when people come to me, there's 6 steps to my own formula. Depending on where you are in our first conversation with you, I can look at whether you need step 2 forward. Maybe you might need step 4 forward. It just depends. And so now, instead of me trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with this one? No, I already know. There's a formula. Now, here's the other thing, too. In addition to you being able to have different types of programming around your formula, for any time I speak anywhere, like when your team reached out and we started setting up what we're going to talk about, asked me to send you information, I can say, well, what step in my formula do I want to talk about today? Right? So instead of me trying to reinvent and go, oh, my God, I got to write up something, if I'm writing an article, if I'm doing a blog, if I'm doing any kind of video, it's all coming from my formula. So it makes everything I do so much easier.
And it's focus, too.
Yes.
Focus and purpose, mindfulness. So you help women figure out their mindfulness, figure out their recipe.
Exactly.
Figure out their thing. That's a real gift that you have. So tell us, so it sounds like, well, not sounds like, from everything we read, from all your experience, you clearly are incredibly successful. So I'd like to hear a little bit about some of the challenges.
So, what's interesting is, I started my business in 1993.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, my own challenge was that even though I knew what my gift was, and I started then, when I got my MSW, took my group and became a nonprofit. Then that nonprofit, I started a for-profit because as my girls started to grow up, they started to have grown women issues like I got the job I always wanted, but I'm not making the money I want, or I want to start my own business because I feel like, I'm helping to build somebody else's $1 billion brand, and there's a $1 billion brand in me, right?
Yes.
And so that's how I started really transitioning to do the work I do now. But here's the thing. So I had 10 chapters in 10 states of my youth program, and it was growing by leaps and bounds, right? I had a maxed out coaching client roster. This is some 17 years in by 2010, right? So my business had set out and done exactly what I dreamed of when I started it, right? So 10 chapters, I had a maxed out coaching client roster. So in 2010, and this is where I met the producer of your show, Miss Pam Perry, in 2010, my first book came out. And when that first book came out, I thought it could be a great fundraiser for young women. For my youth program, and then I could, still bless women with the principles because I couldn't take on another client. Well, then I started getting speaking invitations all over the country. So I'm doing all of this. My business had finally gotten to where I wanted it to be, but I want you to get this. I was only making $13,000 a year. And 13,000.
Yes. Okay.
Now, obviously, I had 2 daytime jobs to pay for my nighttime calling, so you can't eat on 13,000. So here was my challenge, and this is why I'm so passionate about what I teach now. Is the only way I was generating income, I had to be present. I was only doing one-on-one. And because I had so many other things on my plate, just like Deborah Tillman, I only have 5 coaching clients because I couldn't take any more than 5. I'm traveling. I got a daytime job, so I kept working really, really harder, and not really looking at what is standing in my way to make more revenue.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I didn't know. Right? And so for many of you listening, sometimes it's just that you don't know what you don't know. And so I remember sitting on my couch. It was November 7th of 2010. I remember the date because I was done. I was ready to quit. I was tired. I had just gotten home from another speaking weekend, and this is when I was teaching. I taught adjunct at Boston University, and my class was at 8 a.m. the next day. I hadn't looked at a lesson. I didn't even know. I didn't read a book. I hadn't done anything. And I was tired. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. And so in that moment I prayed, Lord, if this is really what I'm called to do, you better show me something. That's how I pray. God knows how he made me, so I talk the same way to him and I talk to all my friends. So I'm like, if this is really what you have called me to do, because I really feel like this was my calling, then you need to show me something. And literally that next week, I think it was that next week because I didn't like time how quickly this happened, but that next week I heard about this free webinar. I got on the free webinar. A free webinar invited me to an event in California. Now, again, I live in Massachusetts. Again, my business makes $13,000, so the event cost $500. I had to buy my plane ticket, which is another $500, and then I went by myself, which the hotel was another $500. So that's $1,500. You know I couldn't afford it.
Right.
But I also thought I couldn't afford not to go.
Okay.
So I went, and at that event, to make a really long story short, I hired my first coach. And what she showed me, Dr. Geneva, in my first coaching session was me. She said, Nicole, don't you teach program development? You taught it at USC for 4 years, and now you teach it at Boston University? And I'm like, yeah. All proud of myself, right? And then she said, and don't you have a consulting practice, and you go into businesses and you develop programs? And I'm like, yeah. She said, Nicole, you don't have any programs. Duh. So that's really when my formula. Now, Fierce was born in that moment when I realized what my gift was, and I started to shift it. But my Fierce formula wasn't born until that moment. And I'm going to tell you, when she said that to me, I had a speaking gig in 2 days. I went home that day because I'm a producer. I can develop programs like overnight. I developed my first program. Do you know? 2 days later, at a speaking event, I made $10,000 off that first program, and literally in 2 days. And mind you, I made $13,000 for a year, and I was on a good year, by the way. So literally within that year, I went from $13,000 to over $200,000 in my business.
And so what? So break that down just a little bit, Nicole. So what happened in that space, do you believe?
So one was oftentimes we discount our greatness.
Okay.
So I was discounting my gift. So during the day, I loved it. I taught program development. That was my master's degree students I was teaching at USC and Boston University. I was teaching them how to develop programs. My consulting practice, I'm teaching people how to develop programs. So I love that. In my coaching practice, I was teaching people how to get out of their own way to start their business. But I had never thought to blend the two. Until that moment, and it was an epiphany moment with just one question or one statement by my coach, Nicole, you don't have any programs. I was like, oh my God, duh, right? And what seems like common to everybody else, but again, many of us discount our greatness. I know many women that I get to talk to throughout the country, and many people that I get to work with as a coach, say to me things like, well, doesn't everybody know how to do that? Or why would anybody pay me to do that? But you have to understand what is your gift. It's not my gift. And yes, there are other people that do what I do, but nobody can do it like me. Just like nobody can do what you do like you do it. And that's what Fierce is all about, is about standing in the full power of it. So for me, my awakening was, oh my God, duh, I've been discounting my own gift. And literally in that moment when I began to see it, it was like that light bulb went on. It's like I could hear the choir singing in heaven. Right?
Aha! That's a real aha moment.
And that shifted everything for me. And that's why I'm so passionate about every woman learning it. Well, 2 reasons I'm passionate, because this is, there's a Bible verse that says, whom he foreknew, he predestined. So all the things that I'm doing now were already in me at birth. Right? And so now I'm in alignment with who God made me to be, number one. But second, I'm so passionate about it because I know for 17 years in my business, I was struggling. And what I learned in my own struggle is that struggle and service should never coexist. Never.
Okay. Say a little bit more about that. Break that down. Service and struggle should never coexist. So, okay, so you're going to break that down.
Sure.
Okay.
So, and I'm a spiritual woman, so you're going to hear a whole lot of Jesus in me. So,
no, it's okay.
So the second thing that God showed me after that moment with my coach, because I'm telling you guys, every year for 17 years, I kept working. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to do this harder. I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing. I'm going to just do it harder. And I kept making the same amount of money, right? So oftentimes you got to know you've taken yourself as far as you can take yourself, right? So here's what I began to realize as I began to see this, it wasn't that I was seeing a new gift in me. It was that I was finally getting a clue about my own gift, right? And then God showed me the Bible verse, and look, I can say Bible verse all day long, and don't ask me where it is, but it is in the Bible. Okay. It's a Bible verse that says, I have come that you have life and have it more abundantly. And so for me, for 17 years, I'm doing this thing that I'm meant to do, but I'm struggling. And what God said is, why would I give you a gift and want you to struggle? And so many of us feel guilty for wanting more, or for asking for help, or for reaching out, when it's just a one needle point move that will shift everything for you. So for me, in that moment when I learned that there was so much more available to me, I had to reach out and get it, but I didn't have the resources to do it. So I felt like I had to be willing to risk it all to gain it all. Meaning that I told you I went all the way across country. I didn't have the money to do it. I put it on my credit card praying, Lord, let me be able to pay this bill next month, right? And went. And then had the nerve to hire a coach, and that coach cost me $30,000, and I only made $13,000 a year. Could I afford it? Heck no, but I couldn't afford to be where I was another year. So what I learned is that she opened my eyes to a new possibility that I didn't see in how I could monetize my gift. She didn't teach me how to monetize it, but she showed me that I wasn't monetizing it. And then that gift was in me. So really, that a great awakening is how I began to see that service and struggle should never coexist. The only reason that so many people struggle is because you keep trying to do the same thing over and over, thinking it's going to produce something different, and it doesn't.
Yes. Okay. Got it. Oh, that's, so really, because I think also what you're saying is that, your gift, and I think that's the service part, but your gift should come, it's what comes naturally. Yep. It's you. It's you. It oozes out of you. It's there. It's all there present. And so it should never cause you pain or disruption. You should be able to flow with it. Right.
So there's 4 steps to what I call my fierce framework.
Yes.
The first step is passion. Like, what do you love, right? I love producing. I could do it all day long. In my book, Find Your Fierce, there's a picture of me at 3 with a baby carriage. And most little 3-year-olds that have a baby carriage have a baby in the carriage. I don't. I have books and papers in it. Because I've been a producer my whole life, right? Okay. So passion, what do you love? Now, the second step is proficiency. What are you great at? Now, let me say this, and this is where so many people get held up. You've got to love it and be great at it. Because you could be great at something, but if you hate it, you're going to not want to get up and work. And when you love what you do, I never feel like I'm working. Sometimes I just wake up in the morning and go, God, I can't believe I get paid to do this, right? But when you are doing what is natural to your DNA, and your DNA for me is distinct natural ability, it's effortless. Yes. You love it. And then what happens is most of you guys, people say things to you like, can I take you out for coffee? I'm going to tease something out with you. Or can I pick your brain? Or your boss at work keeps putting you on a special projects. That's because they see your proficiency. Right. And if you love it, then you should be getting paid for it, right? Because then it, number 3, solves a problem. And then number 4 is how do you make profit from it? That's the 4-step fierce framework. So, yes.
So that passion, what do you love, what are you great at, the problem solving, and then the profit.
Right, because here's the thing I want you to get about problem.
Yes.
It solves a problem for somebody that needs you. That's why God said that, that's why the Bible verse I said earlier, that whom he foreknew, he predestined. See, I believe that God put us all here on special assignment. So we're all like Jasmine or James Bond, right? So because what you have in you is the answer to somebody's problem. And every day that you do not stand fully in the power of your gift, you're holding up somebody's blessing. You are like somebody's unanswered prayer.
Yes. So, Nicole, what's next for you?
Oh, there's so many things. So right now I'm in the middle of my Find Your Fierce tour, and this is my second year doing the tour and really wanting to touch more women because what I know for sure is we've got to stand in the gap for women to be all that they were born to be and get paid for it. And so just wanting to serve more and hold the space for more women is really my goal around the tour. So that's really what I'm in the middle of right now.
Okay. And how could people connect with you?
Sure, and I want to actually give a free gift. So those of you who say,
okay.
I want to learn how to bankroll my brilliance, I want to give you the gift of my webinar, Bankroll Your Brilliance. So go to bankrollyourbrilliance.com, and it'll walk you through the 3 steps on how to really make multiple streams of income from what you already know.
All right.
And that's for you, whether you've already been in business or you want to start your business. It's for both.
So Nicole, give it to us one more time.
bankrollyourbrilliance.com.
bankrollyourbrilliance.com. And so, and just the opportunity to be able to not only listen to you, but to hear you talk your stuff, because you got it together. I love hearing. I want to share with my listeners that I had a chance to watch Nicole on a YouTube video. She was being interviewed, and I don't remember what the time frame might have been, but I was just so super impressed, and it was really, I said, great, I'm glad I'm going to have her on my podcast, because I know my listeners could learn from her. And of course, listeners, bankrollyourbrilliance.com, you can learn more from her, and she's giving all of our listeners a free gift. But the thing that really impressed me as I was watching and learning from you on your video was your authenticity. And while you haven't mentioned that either in your formula, or you perhaps haven't used that word in our conversation, I think that oozes out of you. And that's what I think surrounds your gift and makes you real. And that's what I felt watching you. It just wasn't a conversation. It just wasn't you doing your thing. And yes, you are out there, you're doing it. You've been in entertainment. You've been all over. You touch people. You got great clients. You're successful. But then you also shared real life stuff, because you lived real life, and you had, and when I saw, you really felt in your space comfortable to do that. So I just really wanted to feed that back to you, my soror.
Thank you. And you know what?
About your authenticity.
Now, authenticity is one of my biggest values. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yes.
And because here's the thing, too, in full disclosure, growing up, being where I'm from, being light-skinned and kind of cute, right? That people define me from that, right? Which is, to me, fake. I'm one car accident away from this being gone. Let me keep it all the way real, right? So for me to be authentic at the core of me inside is so valuable to me, because I was judged so long for outside. And again, outside is superficial. And I had a superficial existence. So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yes.
And I run from that. And by the way, it's so funny. When I hired a marketing company to come up with my new branding, and they came back with fear, so I was like, I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I thought it was superficial. And then when they started saying what my clients said about me, about the fact that I will not let you go, I stand in the gap for you, I fight for you, I'm in your face about your gift, and they all said it's like a fierce thing, and I was like, oh, okay, I like that.
I like
so
that.
I appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for that.
Well, I appreciate you, and I certainly appreciate your time that you spent with us and helping our listeners really learn about how they can find out who they are and bankroll it. Make money from it. So, Nicole Roberts Jones, the best of everything to you in all the work that you do, the CEO of Fierce Factor. We love you, and we wish you the best of everything.
Thank you. Love you, too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.